Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I wish to welcome all of you who are joining us today from different time zones. I'm Sayako Tokusue, Corporate Communications Officer at Sasakawa Africa Association, and I will be facilitating much of the event today. Again, welcome to the official side event for the TICAD 8, Tokyo International Conference for African Development, hosted by SAA, International Food Policy Research Institute, and African Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services, entitled Multidimensional and Digitally Enabled Agricultural Extension, Accelerating Agricultural Transformation in the Face of Global Crisis. Let me make a few housekeeping announcements before we start. There's a translation button available at the bottom of the Zoom screen for translation into Japanese. You can choose either English or Japanese from the interpretation icon. During the event, you may submit questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom screen. If you like, you can also specify which speakers to address your questions to. Those questions will be answered during the event by the speakers and also towards the end of the program at the Q&A session. For those questions that are not answered during the event due to time limitation, we will try to get responses from our speakers after the event and put them on our website at a later date. The whole event will be recorded and uploaded, also later on. Now, I'd like to invite our first speaker of the opening session, Madam Ruth Onyango, who is the chair of the board of SAA, also the founder of the African Journal of Food and Agriculture, and 2017 African Food Prize laureate. Please proceed. Madam, you are very much welcome.
Thank you, Sayako. Thank you so much. And I know you people have become such experts at organizing these events, virtually by Zoom. I'm happy to be here. I'm joining you from Western Kenya. The time here is 1:30 p.m. or a little after. Yeah, so let me just go ahead and welcome our distinguished speakers. We have a lineup of excellent, well-known experts in their fields, people in leadership here, and most of them have actually heeded our call to join us. Let me just mention Her Excellency Yosefa Sako, who will be our keynote speaker. Dr. Beth Danford is here. Mr. Johan Sokonen should be here. Dr. Slim Nadi, and my very good friend and a great supporter of SAA and a great supporter of African food security, Mr. Yohe Sasakawa. And distinguished speakers, panelists, all of you who are here, friends of SAA. Some of you we already have signed a memoranda of understanding with, joining us at this very special event, TICAD 8, Tokyo International Conference on African Development. And just to let you know that we normally have an event, we normally participate as AAA, all because of Mr. Sasakawa, who is a well-recognized, distinguished Japanese. And right now, I believe he is representing the government of Japan physically, where the event is going on in Tunis. So the title today is quite a mouthful, multi-dimensional digitally enabled agricultural extension in Africa, accelerating agricultural transformation in the face of global crisis. And we have quite a number of speakers who will be focused on this topic specifically, and then others on related subjects. I just want to welcome you all, those of you participants who are joining us digitally, virtually, or wherever you are very, very welcome to this event. And there's a lot to learn, and we just want to thank you for being here with us. Let me go ahead and say that since we started this program way back in 1986, following a terrible famine in the Horn of Africa, and our founders, late Dr. Norman Borlaug, award-winning, actually Nobel Prize winner, late Roichi Sasakawa, who was the philanthropist, and succeeded by his son, Mr. Yohe Sasakawa, who continues to make sure that we get good funding, and President Jimmy Carter, who is still going strong. It's just been amazing. Those three founders, we continue to honor them and to thank them for their vision. And hopefully, wherever they are happy with the efforts we are making. We are not there yet, and we are far from there, but we have to continue doing this. The challenge at that time, was to make sure we produce enough food. We use technologies which could be used by smallholder farmers, very simple ones. And at the time also, it was just intensive agriculture, using fertilizer and making sure that people are able to offset hunger. So we were addressing the issue of hunger at the time. We would work in remote areas, and most of our smallholder farmers are very much in remote areas of Africa, and to make sure that whatever they do farming, they do it efficiently and as effectively as possible, and working closely with them. And we also do that, taking the farmers along with us. We know they're smart. They also have technologies. I mean, we also can learn from them as well. So it's not just a top-down approach. And we have tried to work with the governments wherever we enter a country, working with the governments, because they are the ones who then have the extension staff, and at the same time, they are the ones who have the policies and who know where the farmers are. Having that respect for governments is something that has informed our work in the countries where we have been. And we believe that at the end of the day, the success we have realized is because we have done that. And so we've been able to demonstrate, together with government extension officers in the countries where public extension works, and these simple technologies. And then we also realized that capacity building in extension was needed very badly. Some countries were actually doing away with public extension. And so we had to make sure that we went into training of extension, and that's how the SAFE program came up, so we could work with universities and make sure that we produce extension workers who could be used in the country. And some of them have gone on to hold very key positions in their countries, and that has helped us a lot in policy making, and also in gaining acceptance to expand our programs in many of these countries. So it worked well for a while there, and we were able to increase yields per unit. And over time, we expanded our interventions to areas. And in the end, I think we were able to reach more than 19 African countries. But as time went on, we also started to address the issue of the value chain, including agro-processing, using very simple technologies and using locally made machinery and post-harvest issues, marketing as well. And we have been able to address the needs as they have come about. But we must admit that the world we live in now, right now as we speak, is so different. Sometimes you feel like it's overwhelming us. I mean, when you see drought in Europe, temperatures going up, it begins to sound like the Turkana of Kenya, the horn of Africa, and in Kenya itself, for the first time, we have the worst drought ever. We have more than 4 million people actually facing starvation. This has never happened before. We have had it, but not to this severity and not these particular numbers. And so now the world is different. We talk now of climate change is real. Everybody realizes that things have changed. We are more serious effect of COVID-19. We have hardly recovered from this world pandemic, it's still around. It affects productivity, it affects people, and we also now have food fertilizer price increase, declining soil fertility. African soil was already very poor, too acidic, too old, and now we see that it's even becoming worse. And so, and even as I speak about the war in Russia and Ukraine, sometimes I feel like we just now using that as an excuse not to do well. For me, particularly, the issue of governance is so critical. And that's why, as Sasakawa Africa Association, we have always gone to governments, because a government is like the mother and father of everyone, not to feed them, but to ensure that they are fed, put programs in place and make sure there is a proper environment, that inputs are affordable for the farmer. They are timely as well for the smallholder farmers. Otherwise, we push them really to the very low bottom of abject poverty and of hunger. So we've done this, and working with the diverse farmers, and some have actually grown and made a lot of effort, and they also begin to teach others as well. And many actually have been able to make a good living out of farming. But we still have a lot of smallholder farmers suffering. Africa still has a lot of imports. You know, we import a lot of food for a continent which is so rich. So what aren't we doing right? So the extension bit, I'm happy we are addressing it right now. And when we talk of multi-dimension, you know, different ways of it, and the approaches that we use, and partnering, especially in the spirit of SDG 17, Sustainable Development Goal 17, which talks of partnerships. And that's why we have been also signing memoranda of understanding with partners where we can have synergy between us. You know, each one brings something different to the table. And particularly we have those with AFAS, and we have it with IFPRI, and we have it with African Development Bank, and many other partners, but specifically we have it with governments as well. So we encourage participation of various actors, and communication is quite key. Communication, how we do this digitally. And I'm speaking to you from a rural area in Kenya. So digitally, actually, we can connect. But at the same time, we should just realize that for many of these farmers, yes, digital connection is not that easy. Resources are needed to do that. But at the same time, you cannot replace one-on-one extension. So let's keep that in mind as well. And so building capacity has been quite key for us. And we just need to send a call to every one of us to be able to work together. And hopefully one of these days, we'll be talking of an Africa which is not in so dire need, because I haven't seen this in the recent past, and I'm not seeing this in the near horizon. And clearly we have to do whatever we can. And the presentations that are going to be made today are really key, making sure that we have the current technologies that we're having right now. So we are happy to host this event with our partners today, like Sayako mentioned, and just want to have everybody enjoy this session. And we want to thank you for always heeding our call when we call you. And please feel free to participate, to contribute, and also to stay in touch. So let me welcome each and every one of you, and please enjoy the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam, for the wonderful welcome and sharing this event's context that sets the tone. Our next speaker is Mr. Johan Suenen, Director General of IFPRI. Unfortunately, he cannot join us in person, but he has kindly provided us a video message that will be shown now.
The world faces a series of crises: COVID-19, climate change, and a variety of conflicts. Despite and because of these crises, Africa's food systems need to be transformed to a nutrition-sensitive, efficient, safe, healthy, and environmentally sustainable food system. This is needed to feed a growing population. This necessitates strengthening local communities' capacity to take up innovations, to help stakeholders to acquire the relevant technical know-how, and to build strong partnerships and institutions. Africa's development partners can play important roles in these efforts, and Japan can play a very important role as one of them. Since January 2020, I have served as the Director General of the International Food Policy Research Institute, IFPRI. IFPRI is an institution that works towards improving food systems in more than 50 countries in the world. In May 2021, I was invited to become the Global Director for the CGIAR's System Transformation Science Group. IFPRI and CGIAR are international organizations established more than 50 years ago. We have collaborated with Japan on several projects for many years, including on the issues of nutrition improvement in poor countries and African countries. Japan has always had a strong commitment to zero malnutrition, to food security, and global poverty reduction. IFPRI works towards these same goals by partnering with the government of Japan, with the private sector, and with civil society to produce evidence-based policy research that can help the poorest and most vulnerable people in the world. For more than 30 years, IFPRI has partnered with Japan in Africa and Asia, influencing policies and investments in countless countries to fulfill this joint purpose. Today, Africa faces many challenges. COVID-19 brought a serious food and economic crisis to Africa and the world. These challenges have been further aggravated in 2022 by the intensifying global food crisis, including price spikes of food and key agricultural inputs such as fertilizer. This is triggered by a series of events, including the Ukraine war. IFPRI's recent studies on the global fertilizer market suggest that African countries face a particularly difficult situation. A decline in fertilizer use could lead to a drastically decreased productivity, with serious consequences for food security on the continent. Africa also faces growing resource scarcity. Improving efficiency through agricultural extension and advisory services, along with the application of digital technologies, will be critical in tackling the emerging global food crisis. IFPRI's recent research on agricultural extension suggests that digital tools can increase the effectiveness of these services. We have done a series of studies in Ethiopia and Uganda, and they show that video-mediated extension had a wider reach than conventional extension, and this led to an increase in knowledge, an increase in uptake of agricultural innovation and inputs, and an increase in yields. However, we also found that digital approaches should be used with care, paying attention to the complexities of rural realities and considering gender and other axes of potential exclusion. IFPRI is keen to support Japan's effort to address the many challenges that Africa faces. Through close collaboration with key partners like the Sasakawa Africa Association, with which IFPRI recently signed an MOU. Sasakawa and IFPRI recently conducted a joint project in Uganda, where we promoted the growth of market-oriented horticultural farmers, and we conducted a series of impact evaluations. This joint program incorporated an approach called Smallholder Horticulture Empowerment and Promotion, an approach promoted very much by Japan. It stresses the importance of educating farmers to understand market mechanisms and to make optimal planting and marketing decisions. The intervention has trained local farmers to produce strategically in order to sell and to stabilize and to boost their farm incomes in difficult communities, difficult circumstances, such as refugee-hosted communities. This contributes to building resilience in these communities, resilience to pandemics such as COVID-19. IFPRI hopes that similar collaborations with SAA can expand. Today's event offers a critical stepping stone for this. We are confident that combining IFPRI's cutting-edge research with Japan's advanced technologies, along with know-how applied by Sasakawa Africa Association and critical African partners, will not only address the current challenges facing countries in these regions, but also build resilience which is much needed against future crises. We are very much proud of this work, and we look forward to continuing our collaboration in the coming years and informing Japanese and African stakeholders to develop a future course of action at this 8th round of TCAT. I wish you a very successful event today, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suenen, for the very concise message on the role and responsibilities of the global communities toward the current global crisis. Our next speaker is Dr. Slim Nardi, Executive Director of African Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services. He is also a founder member of the Global Forum of Rural Advisory Services and has been the chair of its steering committee. supporting policy formulation and dialogue globally, including Africa. Dr. Slim, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Apple, for introducing me. It's on. What's happening? Hello?
We can't hear you.
Hello? You can't, eh? You can hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Slim.
You can hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Yako. Okay. Your Excellency, yourself, Commissioner, Rural Development, African Union, Mr. Yohei Sakawa, Chairman, Nippon Foundation, Dr. John. It's a great honor, really, to be part of this important event. And I wish to welcome all of you in this event. Well, I just want to very quickly to thank again Sasakawa for making us part of this event and organizing this event, which are extremely important in the continent at this point in time. Well, I don't want to go straight into AFAS or what we are doing, but just want to put Africa at a glance, really. Like has been mentioned, Africa is rich. Over 60% of its land is arable, and it has over 1.4 billion individuals as in its population. And almost 70% depend on agriculture and work in agriculture. So these are opportunities that really present itself to Africa. However, what we also know is that the agricultural sector lags behind a lot of the national economic growth in Africa. And this has been a very big challenge for African continents, with the exception of a few countries. And some of the issues have been, some of the challenges have been mentioned by the Director General and Professor Ruth Onyango. But one of the biggest thing, of course, just like all other countries in the world, it's of course climate change and associated effects like floods, drought, diseases, new diseases, and pests, and so on. Of course, COVID has been there. There's rapid population growth, which is a problem, but it could present itself as well as an opportunity. But like I mentioned, the biggest problem really is low productivity. Low productivity is one big problem. Problem is a constant slow use of new technologies and innovations. And the issue of scaling up technologies and innovations is paramount in this perspective. But I think it has been mentioned by IFPRI, there is issue of funding, mostly investment is low. A lot of the issues with low productivity and low productivity, issues of capacity well there, the complexity of value chain and so on and so forth also affected. But there's some light when you look at the global level. We know there's the SDGs in which there are about 10 SDGs mention agriculture. At continental level, at the AUC level, we have a 2063 and a CADA, an innovation agenda, and so on. And we also know, especially on digitalization, there's a digital transformation agenda for Africa, 2020, 2023. All these are really policies that have been put in place. Basically, I just want to focus a little bit on one of the principal issues and one of the biggest challenges low use of input, technology adoption, and scaling out technology and innovations. And that's where certainly the role of agriculture extension and advisory services has a central place, a central role in that area. And again, just going back to SDG, this has also been amplified in SDG, especially SDG 2A, which also puts the importance of agriculture and specifically it talks of the role of extension in boosting agricultural productivity, increasing food security, improving rural livelihoods, promoting agriculture as an engine of poor economic growth and supporting. Now, when you look at extension, and especially this topic of the multidimensional agriculture extension. Extension, if we used to say, agriculture now is very different in Africa. In those days, there was public service extension system, and it was mostly the extension system used to focus mostly on economically important crops, especially the state actors are still there, but there's a huge private sector. There's a research system, there's civil society, there's education systems, the input suppliers, even including rural finance. All these play a role in this. And unfortunately, most of the national systems don't have a policies and institutions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nerdy. Sorry that there seems to be
technical arm of,
Dr. Slim.
yeah.
Sorry, I'm very sorry, but there seems to
Hello?
be a very yes, we hear you, but there is some technical trouble. I think the connection is not very stable. So, is it okay if we move to the next program?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very sorry about that, but we have got the major point of your message. Thank you so much. So now we are very happy to introduce you, Mr. Yohei Sasakawa, the chairman of the Nippon Foundation. Unfortunately, she cannot join us in person as he's currently in Tunisia to attend the TICAD conference, but he has also kindly provided us a video message that will be shown now.
Commissioner Josepha Sakko, African Union. Dr. Bess Danford, Vice President, Africa Development Bank. Dr. Johan Swinen, Director General, International Food Policy Research Institute. Dr. Shirim Nadi, Executive Director, African Forum for Agriculture Advisory Services. Honorable Professor Ruth Onyango, Chair, Sasakawa Africa Association, and distinguished participants. One world, one family. This is the guiding principle of the Nippon Foundation. that underpins all our global humanitarian activities. We see the world as one family, and based on this philosophy, our support rises above politics, religion, nation states, and borders. In answer to the 1984 famine in Ethiopia, my father, the late Ryoichi Sasakawa, called on Nobel Peace Prize laureate and leader of Green Revolution, Dr. Norman Borlaug, and the former President of the United States, Mr. Jimmy Carter, to provide an increased food production program for the smallholder farmers who are the mainstay of African agriculture. This was the start of the way for farmers to become self-sustainable and improve their standard of living. This is how SAA was born. It is a totally field-oriented association based on the principle of working with the farmer. We have to this day actively worked under the ethos of always being with the farmers in place, feeling, and perspective. 36 years have passed since SAA was founded, and agriculture has evolved globally. Today, the key to its further transformation is multi-dimensional and digitally enabled agricultural extension. For example, SAA is promoting the e-extension platform approach for the first time in Africa. This is to be able to cross the information gap between smallholder farmers and their stakeholders along the agricultural value chain by utilizing ICT. It is my hope that SAA will continue their study and research in advanced technologies of different countries for the further advancement of agriculture in Africa. For that, I have high expectations of achieving concrete results through the MOU we have concluded this year with International Food Policy Research Institute and African Forum for Agricultural Advisory Services. The Nippon Foundation will continue to support SAA and its principle of working with the farmer into the future. Together, let us promote the implementation of multi-dimensional and digitally enabled agriculture extension services by taking into full consideration and respect for socio-economic status of the farmers, so as to arrive at a more enriched and productive Africa. No matter what difficulties we face, I promise to continue to address the food crisis in Africa in the spirit of never give up. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sasakawa. Our next program is a keynote address by Her Excellency Josepha Sako, Commissioner for Agriculture and Rural Economy at the African Union. But unfortunately, she's late for the program due to an urgent engagement she has got. While we hope to see if she could join us at the later part of the program, for now, allow us to proceed to the next program, which is the special address by Dr. Beth Danford, Vice President of Agriculture, Social and Human Capital of the African Development Bank. Among many important engagements, Dr. Danford is responsible for the bank's strategy and lending and other activities in agriculture. She also leads technical expertise for the bank's multi-billion-dollar response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa. Before joining the bank, she has held senior-level leadership positions in the U.S. government and USAID. Dr. Danford, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to address you today and for the opportunity to represent African Development Bank President, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. I'd also like to thank those of you who are joined us online today for this important session and all protocols observed. So as we experience our life journey, it sometimes feels like technology is progressing faster than ever. And it's actually just not our imagination. Most progress is linear, but technological progress is exponential. American futurologist Ray Kurzweil coined a phrase that sums this up really well: the law of accelerating returns. And that law is great news for Africa. So take, for example, mobile phone penetration in Africa. In the last decade, the number of Africans using or having access to cell or smartphones has grown at an annual rate of 11%. So since the turn of the century, that number of internet users in Africa has skyrocketed from 4.5 million to 523 million. That's a 116-time increase. By 2025, at least 634 million people in Africa will have access to mobile phones. Some 40% will be connected to the internet. This creates unprecedented access to information, services, and solutions that were previously impossible. So multidimensional and digitally enabled agricultural extension services are exactly what Africa needs now. Climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic, and now also Russia's war in Ukraine all conspire against Africa's development. They have the potential to cause a major food crisis and exacerbate what is already happening on the ground. In face of these enormous challenges, Africa must improve yields and increase production efficiency. We must add value, keep costs under control, and improve transparency and sustainability. Multidimensional and digitally enabled agricultural extension services achieve just that. The 2018 Digitalization of African Agriculture report published by Dahlberg Advisors and the Technical Center for Agricultural and Rural Cooperation shows that smallholder farmers who deployed digital tools recorded a 40 to 70% increase in yield and income returns. Yet these technologies reach only 10% of Africa's farmers. Despite the promising opportunities that digital technologies offer to deliver more sustainable food systems and to address the impact of fast increasing climate variation, the big question is how to scale up access, affordability, and updates of these technologies by smallholder farmers. So the African Development Bank is helping to provide the answer. Digital technologies are not yet reaching the poor, rural, and small-scale farmers, value chain actors, especially women who are the most disadvantaged. About 40 to 50% of smallholder farmers are women, but they account for only a quarter of registered users of digital agriculture solutions. Recognizing that the future of farming is data-driven, we have established the Digital Agriculture Flagship. It is a bold program to harness digital innovations, to harness public and private sector investments in data-driven and digital innovations. The bank's digital agricultural program will help governments to deliver digitization as a public good at a reasonable cost to everyone. So the African Development Bank has also launched the Africa Digital Financial Inclusion Facility to accelerate digital financial inclusion across Africa in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Agence Française de Développement, and the Ministry of Finance and the Government of Luxembourg, and the Ministry of Economy and Finance of the Government of France. So by 2030, The facility will deploy $400 million in grants and loans with the goal of ensuring 332 million more Africans, the majority of them women, have access to finance. We've structured the facility as a blended finance mechanism composed of a multi-donor special fund. It has a target envelope of 100 million and is resourced with grant money from partners, as well as with debt funding of up to 300 million from ordinary capital resources of the African Development Bank. So we are mainstreaming digital technologies into all of our Freed Africa strategy investments, valued at 2 billion per year. The bank's Feed Africa strategy aims to transform Africa's agriculture into a globally competitive, sustainable, inclusive, and business-oriented sector that creates wealth, generates employment, and improves quality of life. We incorporate digital technology into all Feed Africa project planning, design, and implementation stages. And we've seen investments made in data platforms for e-registration and digital profiling of farmers to improve access to inputs and output markets in Liberia, Togo, and Malawi. More recently, the bank provided $20 million to integrate fintech solutions for seed systems in Nigeria. And last year, we approved $250 million program across the Horn of Africa that has a strong focus on climate-smart digital technologies to strengthen climate resilience and adaptation. To scale up Africa's agricultural sector digitization, we need to have a clear vision of the digital agriculture landscape unique to African countries. So we teamed up with the Food and Agricultural Organization and the International Center for Tropical Agriculture to publish a series of digital agriculture profiles. The first in the series looked at Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, and South Africa, identifying opportunities for digital agriculture implementation and prioritizing which technologies are most likely to help investors and implementers maximize impact. We will soon be rolling out digital agricultural profiles for other countries. And a short while ago, we were back at the table with the Food and Agricultural Organization and the International Institute of Tropical Agriculture and the Global Center on Adaptation to design a digital agricultural toolkit. And this toolkit aims to be a sort of a how-to guide for development practitioners to build their capacity to just really mainstream agricultural digital technologies for agricultural interventions into public sector investments. So ladies and gentlemen, technology empowers us to find African solutions for African problems. The desire to embrace agricultural digital technology is there. The impact of what we aim to achieve is measurable. Between 2018 and 2021, the ag tech sector in Africa grew by 5% per year. And as of last year, our research showed that more than 33 million smallholder farmers and pastoralists are using at least 461 kinds of digitalization for agriculture. So African companies are hugely successful, and companies like Apollo Agriculture in Kenya and AgroCenta in Ghana use farmer e-registration to collect data on farmer biometrics and the natural resources assets that they own. So these are the fundamental building blocks to create farmer-specific production profiles, market volume predictability, and credit profiles for access to finance. So we know that Africa has about 60% of the world's arable land, and combine that with the fact that Africa's population of 1.4 billion is set to double. And then you know where Africa's future millionaires will be made. It's in agriculture. The mainstreaming of agricultural digitech will be another incentive also for Africa's youth to contribute to our shared goal to help feed Africa. So one way we're putting our money where our mouth is via our African Youth Entrepreneurship AgriForum AgriPitch competition, where young and tech-savvy entrepreneurs in the agriculture sector are raising hopes that Africa can fast-track its very own green revolution. So we can look to our recent AgriPitch competition winner, Relief, which is a Nigerian food processing company. It started by Nigerian American graduates from MIT, Yale, Duke, and universities who set up shop in Oyo Nigeria. Relief is helping to connect producers to agro-processors and value addition opportunities in order to reduce post-harvest losses. They have linked more than 1,000 smallholder farmers to food factories with over 7.5 kilograms of quality crops sold in less than 18 months. So developing multidimensional and digitally enabled agricultural extension services enhances the resilience of smallholder farmers and agri-value chains in Africa. It's really time to stop thinking of farming as a colloquial pastime and more like a tech-savvy future of agribusiness. Innovations such as the Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, all really give new appeal to an age-old industry that some believed lacked earning power. Africa's new generations of agripreneurs don't guide a plow, they fly a drone. So we envision Africa to become an agricultural powerhouse that provides food security, creates wealth, and generates millions of jobs for our youth. And we will improve the lives for the people of Africa. That for sure is a fact. Together we sow the seeds for the future today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dunn, for sharing the bank's great initiative, highlighting tremendous opportunities for digitalizing agriculture and accelerating innovation in Africa. Now we'd like to move to a special report by Dr. Laborde, Senior Research Fellow with IFPRI's Markets, Trade and Institutions Division. He will be presenting a topic based on his recent research on the long and short-term consequences of the war in Ukraine on the global food systems. Dr. Laborde, the floor is yours.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening. Thanks for this opportunity. And yes, it will be a pleasure for me to talk about a relatively sad topic today. And it's how the current situation triggered both by the COVID-19 crisis, a number of climatic events, and on top of that, the war in Ukraine has actually pushed prices up significantly for energy product and food product globally. And this has a specific impact on Africa that, unfortunately, is one of the continents the most vulnerable to this external shock. So next slide, please. Yes, and I will start with this simple fact that I think most of you are familiar with, but it's important to remind you that Africa starts with a relatively low level of productivity and a low level of fertilizer. On this slide, what you see are different dots, and the colors, each dot represents a country. The colors indicate a continent, so you will see Europe in red and Africa in orange. And the more on the right you are, the more fertilizer you use per hectare of land you have, and the higher you are, the larger are your cereal yields. And as you see, when the more in average you use fertilizer, the higher your yield are. At the world level, the average yield for cereals is 4 tons per hectare, and farmers use 120 tons of fertilizer per hectare. Africa is not even at half of this level in productivity, and 1/4, a quarter in terms of fertilizer. So that was a starting point even before the crisis. And as you see also on this graph, that's really a common trend for basically all African countries, when in other parts of the world we see much more heterogeneity, with of course countries that use and sometimes overuse fertilizer, and some other countries in the same area that may be lagging behind. Next slide, please. But when we start to go a bit deeper and we see what smallholders are doing in different African countries and for different crops, here you can see the bar and that go up to 100 is the share of the land that smallholders cultivate that use fertilizer. And here also you see some important variation. So in Uganda, for instance, not even 10% of the maize cultivated by smallholders benefit from from fertilizer, while in Kenya it will be 71%. And what we see is that the crops that have the lower value, like sorghum and millet, receive less fertilizer, when actually the cash crops, like cotton, tea, or tobacco, in many places will receive more fertilizer or fertilizer in purity. And I think that's something very important to keep in mind is using fertilizer for farmers are an economic choice, a rational choice. And fertilizer in Africa are costly. And that's where this crisis will be important, because if you increase the cost of fertilizer, you reduce the incentive to use them, and you are going even to deteriorate productivity. Next slide, please. So what has happened on world markets for fertilizer? And you see here a red line for energy product, oil and gas, and that's the black line. And for grains, that's the green line. And here we can see the real prices over more than 16 years of evolution. And as you see right now, we are at this very high level of prices. Depending on which product we are talking about, we are at level of prices from 2011-12, in some case 2007-2008. In average, real food prices on world market are as high as in the 70s, where we had this major global food crisis that at the time has triggered a global response. And if the situation is not, the worst situation we have seen since the Second World War, we are in a very difficult situation. But also what you see on this slide is these different prices are moving together. They are all going to impact smallholders and rural community, because energy price is an important part of expenditure, but also a key element about how they are connected to markets. So the urban-rural linkages is actually suffering from higher energy price. Food prices, I will come back to it, but it can be a good news or bad news depending if you are actually a net seller or net buyer of food. But what also is pretty striking on this graph is you see that fertilizer prices have always overreacted to the other components. And in particular, if your grain prices increase less than your fertilizer prices, for many farmers, that may not be a good news, because their profit margin are going to shrink. And as I just discussed before, it means that instead of producing more, they can even start to producing less, and therefore the food crisis can continue. And that's what we have to be very aware in the current situation. Next slide, please. Now, as you know, the overall continent of Africa is a net importer of calorie. From one country to another, the situation can be different. But what is even more striking is how Africa, in particular sub-Saharan Africa, is dependent on world market for their fertilizer supply. On this map, the darker the country is, the more they basically import. And when you see a dark purple color, it basically means that more than 90% of your fertilizer, and here I'm just focusing on nitrogenous fertilizer, but other kind of fertilizer, the picture will be even more extreme for African countries, are imported. So really it means that any increase in prices of fertilizer on world market, or even any scarcity, is going to impact drastically this country. The few countries in Southern Africa that are partially protected to that, or even can benefit from the crisis, is a country like Nigeria, because Nigeria has both natural gas and has invested recently in a processing facility, meaning to transform this natural gas in ammonia and urea and other similar product. And of course, at the continental level, between the northern part of the continent and the southern part of the continent, there is possibility to trade other products like phosphate. But overall, Africa remains a small part of the global market. And also that means that sometimes it has been forgotten when people have to make important trading decisions. Next slide, please. And here I'm moving to another map where I say basically how much fertilizer countries have not bought this year compared to what they should have bought. And here also, the darker the picture, the more forfeited consumption you have in terms of, here it's import in terms of share of your domestic use. And here also you see a number of African countries have not been supplied enough on fertilizer, and that's going to have consequences. Next slide, please. And one of the first consequences, price have been risen. So here you see the price of urea on a number of markets. The black line is for the world. The red line is for China. I'm going to explain why I've used this example. And the other prices are for African countries, Kenya, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. And as you will see, they have all increased. Even in a country like Nigeria, where initially the urea price were not as high and in other places and not so far from the world prices and even the Chinese prices, they have increased significantly because global demand and global prices have driven prices up. In the recent couple of months, prices have started to decline on world prices, but we have not really seen it on the local market. And as you see, a country like China has basically managed to insulate its market through various policies to protect their farmers and have not seen the rise in fertilizer prices when African farmers have seen it. And so you also understand why at the global level there is such a kind of inequality. Next slide, please. Now, if I look about how this changed the profitability, so basically how you compare the price of maize in a country to the price of fertilizer, in the three markets I am looking at, Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria, this profitability has fallen by 40%. So what it means is that in some places, basically maize price on the local market have not increased or have just increased a bit, when fertilizer prices have even double or triple. And therefore, we have seen this contraction of profitability for farmers. Next slide, please. So when you put all of this together, that's why smallholders see their food security threatened, because on one hand, you have more than half of the smallholders in Africa that are net food buyers. So already when food prices go up, it's not like these farmers make more money. Actually, they have to pay more for their food, and so their food security is going to decrease. But also this year, they are going to have access to less fertilizer. So a number of farmers are going to move from net food seller to net food buyer, or some that were just self-sufficient are going to be net food buyers. So they have to go on the market in a situation when some of these food prices have risen. But also the farmers that remain net food sellers have to pay higher price for their fertilizer, but also have to deal with higher access costs to markets, transportation costs, leading to, in some cases, lower prices that they receive because someone has to compensate for this higher cost. And also it can increase food losses. Next slide, please. And when you combine all of this together, and that's some of the work that we do at IFPRI and some of my colleagues have done for a number of African countries, we see all these shocks are going to lead to an increase in rural poverty between 1 point and more than 3 percentage points for the rural population. And the fuel and fertilizer prices are key drivers. And actually, only in a few countries, the increase in food prices will benefit in net terms the farmers. So just to conclude now, a few couple of points. First one, next slide, please, is, I've talked a lot about fertilizer, but fertilizer alone is not enough. For example, in Malawi, we have seen in the recent years providing more fertilizer, we're not increasing productivity, or at least the rate of return was really decreasing. So knowledge is very important. And some of my colleagues during the session will talk about this, and that's where extension services matters. And in fertilizer, we refer to the 4 R's, meaning that we want the right source in the right rate at the right time in the right place to address it. So we need to connect fertilizer and knowledge. Next slide, please. Then you need a policy package that is detailed here, and in the presentation you will see slides, references of this slide. But here the idea that there is some choices that have to be made, some policies to protect some vulnerable farmers, and it not always means to subsidize more fertilizer. That's what is very important. You need to be smart in terms of the policy you make, and once again to combine a knowledge response, an economic response, and in some case a safety net response, and avoiding simplification is important. Next slide, please. And to introduce, I think, what will be discussed by my colleague more in detail is, in this context, I would say extension services matters a lot, because on one hand, it creates awareness to farmers about how markets evolve, including prices evolve. In many African countries, I have been intervening this year. Even farmers didn't even know what was happening on world market for more than 1 year now. And so bringing this information is important. Then we also need to improve the efficiency of the fertilizer they have in order that they maximize the profits they make from it. When there is no fertilizer, we have to provide other solutions about, like for example, intercropping or alternative crop that will be less dependent on fertilizer during this period. And last but not least, we want to address some of the inequalities in this time of crisis, in particular in terms of gender. Next slide, and we just thank you, everyone. And I'll be happy to deal with questions later.
Thank you, Dr. Laborde, for your very concise and informative analysis and even suggestion on the impact of recent food and fertilizer price increase on African smallholder farmers. Next, let me invite Dr. Christine Davis to present status and future of extension in Africa. Dr. Davis is a senior research fellow at IFPRI and is an extension and education expert. She has done numbers of research on agricultural extension systems worldwide and pointed out the importance of multidimensional extension system, which is one of the key themes of today's event. So Dr. Davis, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and nice to see all of you today. I hope the slides are going to be back up again in a minute, but I will be speaking about agricultural extension and advisory services, referring mainly to extension for the sake of simplicity. On my second slide, the key message is we've just been hearing about the many challenges that are facing African producers today. Climate change, COVID-19, as Prof. Onyango mentioned, the impacts of the war in Ukraine, increasing fertilizer prices more than 230% since May 2020. These prices are going to affect food production, food prices, food security in Africa. Extension services are here to help farmers solve these types of problems and to help feed their nations. I'm going to present a small snapshot of extension in Africa with a focus on the multidimensional aspects, the increasing pluralism in governance and methods, including digitalization. I'll then talk about the roles going forward and the need for more capacity, funding, and innovation. Next slide, please. There is a link between how extension performs, the middle box, as measured by things like timeliness, access, quality, etc., and the impacts on the right-hand side, food security, productivity. The performance of extension services is linked to the characteristics of extension in the first box, governance structures, funding, organization and management, methods, and how extension engages with client. We can thus alter the characteristics of extension on the left box to help it to perform better using the so-called best fit framework. Next slide, please. As I said, I'd like to give a snapshot of extension services in Africa based on recent research by IFPRI and others. We'll look particularly at the increasing pluralistic and digital nature of extension services. The governance of extension is extremely important, providing institutional options to structure, organize, and finance extension services. We do see increasing pluralism in extension, with private companies providing integrated services and giving farmers all-round support. We see countries like Uganda using the village-based extension agents, providing services and inputs, advice, and linking farmers to market. Many countries also use farmer extensionists, also known as lead farmers or volunteer farmer trainers, who can be highly effective, training 20 farmers a month on average in an East African dairy development program. We also have the public sector, where extension services tend to carry quite a heavy burden of work with limited incentives and limited rewards, according to some research in Ethiopia and Democratic Republic of Congo. What is needed on the governance side are better policies, better incentives for collaboration of these multiplicity of actors and between the different providers. There's also an increasing number of methods for outreach, education, and training by extension. Next slide, please. Information sharing is an important and classic function of extension. I think my colleague, Dr. Laborde, discussed the farmers in Kenya who had no clue that fertilizer prices are increasing. And extension really needs to provide this type of information. Digital tools can provide a wider reach, getting more knowledge to more people. However, different digital tools need to be used for different types of messages, right? And also for different audiences. Sometimes tools are also not complementary, as mentioned by Dr. Swinnen. We do also need to be careful that certain social groups are not left out. Women, for instance, might not have the capacity or the access to tools and the skills to use the tools. Extension staff as well might not also have the capacity to use digital tools. In Rwanda, researchers examined digital readiness of different extension staff in the different sectors. And staff who were younger, came from the private sector, had access to smart technologies or better education and training, were more open to change, such as digitalization. In general, though, in extension in Africa, skills are lacking for the extension staff to effectively use digital tools. So these staff need to be upskilled. Next slide, please. So extension staff are critical for African producers, but they need the right skills, the right knowledge, and the right attitudes. We need extension staff who have digital literacy, can use social and multi-channel communication, and understand business and marketing, to name a few of the competencies we need in today's extension services. The SHEP approach, where IFPRI is collaborating with Sasakawa Africa Association in Uganda, is one approach that supports mindset change that's needed both by farmers and by extension. We had a really amazing side event with SHEP earlier this week with Mr. Jiro Aikawa presenting about the SHEP approach. Next slide, please. So going forward, what does this mean for extension in the future? How can agricultural extension and advisory services support African producers to produce sustainably while still dealing with risk and change? Firstly, extension needs to provide information, but smart information. And I mean smart in two different ways. The tools that are used, but also the messages themselves need to be smart. For instance, as Dr. Laborde mentioned, to deal with the fertilizer crisis, extension can be providing the know-how, the tools for more efficient, site-specific, and integrated nutrient management using those 4 R's that he mentioned. Extension can also encourage farmers to diversify their fertilizer sources. For instance, use livestock manure and compost and things like that. Secondly, extension services need to be aware of the different social groups, young, old, men, women, and their different needs, and to meet those needs at the point where they are. Thirdly, to deal with risk and change, farmers really need to diversify. This means taking smart decisions, having the ability to read markets, to gather information, and to nimbly change in response to shocks, such as we're seeing today. And then finally, for farmers to make these smart decisions, extension really has to go beyond just providing information to empowering farmers to make decisions by themselves. Last slide. But it's not just up to extension services. Governments, development partners also need to support extension, and research shows that this makes agricultural interventions more effective, as seen as in the Series 2030 Nature publication on sustainable solutions to end hunger. Extension is really increasingly a key priority for donors today, and development partners should increase investment in agriculture, particularly in extension. Development partners can supplement implementation of policies and strategies that support extension and thus smallholder producers. Just to give a couple examples, in Kenya, the policy research is calling for expanding ag production and productivity through the government's Vision 2030 and the Big Four agenda. I hope the new government is going to continue with this. The Malawi fertilizer prices are really increasing, and researchers have called for policy options to make more efficient use of the fertilizer and of the fertilizer subsidies that they use in the country of Malawi. And then in Nigeria, we have this massive food price inflation. There's a need to revive the extension strategy and promote technologies and increase mechanization to improve ag productivity. This is not going to happen by doing the same old things. We really need to innovate in terms of how we invest and how we implement policies. This support through investment, budget allocations, and an enabling policy environment needs to happen not just at national, but also regional and global levels. It's only through major concerted efforts such as these that we can transform food systems and ensure global food security. Thanks very much, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis, for your great presentation with numbers of important evidence and analysis that guides us the way forward. At this juncture, we'd like to move to a more practical experience sharing. Let me invite Max Olpot, Director for Program at AFAS, who will present effectiveness of a multidimensional agricultural extension system. Mr. Olpot, please proceed.
Thank you, moderator, and thanks everyone for setting the scene. We are very delighted to be here this afternoon to share experiences from AFAS and basically the continental perspective. I'll go straight to a bit of AFAS for our partners who are hearing AFAS for the first time, then dwell a bit on the dimensional agriculture extension in context of pluralism, then few lessons and conclusion. AFAS was set and it is here under the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Program to ensure that there is utilization of improved knowledge and innovation by agriculture value chains and actors. This therefore calls for multi-dimensional provision of services both at research and extension level. The mission of AFAS more focuses on learning, professionalism, and adding value to national agricultural extension systems. Again, this shows where AFAS underpins and goes into the support to the national agendas that we have in Africa. AFAS is driven by a strategy which has three main pillars. The first one is strengthening and expanding network and knowledge management. And knowledge is critical in the space of agricultural research and innovation. The second pillar is on developing capacities for scaling up and out technologies, innovations, and practices. This is very critical for Africa because we even find technologies at the research, but they are not reaching the last mile. Therefore, AFAS and its network and partners are critical in ensuring that this happens in Africa. We're actually having this mandate from African Union Commission, and indeed, it is also the genesis why we have a very strong MOU with the Sasakawa and to ensure that we reach the last mile. The third pillar is on facilitating advancement of agriculture extension and advisory services in terms of policy and thought leadership. Just to mention briefly about dimensional agriculture extension system, I think just like Prof. Onyango already mentioned, I want to say that the next generation of rural women and men need capacities and skills which are very different from their parents. You know, we have moved further and now the dynamics are even more versatile. In the same way, the capacities of the extension people will be different from those that we have been having. In terms of food systems, three fundamental things are critical: people, planet, and prosperity. And these have to be addressed at a coherent way. Again, extension will play a critical role in all this and will make Africa have proper farmers who have agriculture as engine of growth. Extension is critical to ensure diffusion of processes of improved knowledge and technologies and practices to the last mile and all value chain actors. Again, pluralistic extension, just like Kristen has mentioned, is critical, but it has to be it is important that it recognizes the differences between farmers and farming systems and the need for agriculture that is developmental oriented and applicable. Again, I want to mention that if dimensional agriculture has to take place, there is need for working together to deliver agri-food systems. I want to highlight a bit of some approaches. Again, Christine has mentioned about SHARP. We have farmer field schools and others. In the context of multi-dimensional extension system, for example, AFA's implemented a post-harvest project, which really was underpinning its focus on the private sector. But the government had a lot of stake in ensuring regulation and policy. And this, we documented a number of lessons which can be shared with the other people. Farm Radio International of recent put what we call the Sustainable Digital Advisory Platforms. And this platform is critical in ensuring that it brings together different digital tools and approaches in an integrated fashion in order to inform and make sure that it shapes the way smallholder farmers are performing. And this is piloted in Ghana, Uganda, under the funding from Canada. And this approach allows multiple actors to come together in this space. Again, this is a very important element of dimensional extension. In Uganda, for example, the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries is having what we call the village agent model, which also was highlighted by Christine. But what I want to summarize is that the village agent model is driven from a private sector point of view in provision of extension, but government and civil society organizations have a stake. Therefore, again, this brings us to understand that the pluralism and multi-stakeholder platforms and all these other things happen in a way of working together. Again, a role of policy, like government of Uganda has a real policy on pluralism, giving people space to provide a service. And for AGRA is having what we call the village-based advisor. The essence of the village-based advisor comes from the issue of low numbers of extension to the farmers. And AGRA is addressing this also from the private sector point of view, working with the government, complementing the government's efforts. So this is going to bridge some gaps that are within the space of advisory services provision. I want to mention briefly about the Extension Week and the call to action that we got into in terms of innovative approaches, professionalism, the role that extension plays in agro-industrialization, harnessing agripreneurship, resilience in terms of addressing the pandemics and emerging issues, and regulation and coordination. These were key issues during Extension Week, which AFAS held last year. And next year we shall have another Extension Week, which we are happy Sasakawa was part of it and very, very instrumental. To sum it up in terms of the lessons in context of pluralism, building on existing systems is important. Let's not just start from afresh. You know, there are so many things that are already existing. Pluralistic extension has to use mixed approaches, blended tools. There is no one fit all, there is no panacea. We need to also coordinate and harmonize effort, and this is an ingredient of a multidimensional extension system. Capacity building and policy are critical. Institutionalization. Many approaches come, many tools come, many good things come, but they just disappear. We must ensure institutionalization, partnerships and collaborations are critical in order to create synergy. Again, policy and capacity are key in the dimensions of these different actors. Digitalization with realistic technologies. Let's not bombard farmers with what they can't even use, even ourselves, but we need to go gradually. And of course, the space of digitalization cannot be underestimated. It is the way to go, but it should be in a thought way. Accountability is critical. In conclusion, therefore, multidimensional extension effectiveness is built on content. What content are we providing? It's built on communication, making all the actors communicate and work together. It's built on capacity. We need the capacity to be coherent. We need the capacity to deliver. Coordination, and I want to emphasize the point that AFAS has country fora in most of the countries in Africa. which can do a lot of coordination of different partners, different approaches. And government plays a regulatory role. Therefore, the support to this country fora is very important if we want to grow a multi-dimensional extension system, a pluralistic extension system. And lastly, collaboration, working together is a way to go. I want to thank all of you for your attention as we continue to collaborate.
Thank you so much, Mr. Olpot, for your great presentation that clearly demonstrates the relevance of the AFA's mandate and sharing with us your precious experiences and lessons learned. Our next speaker is my colleague, Dr. Mel Oloch, who is the Director of Strategic Partnership at SAA, and will talk about SAA's field experience on digitalization of agricultural extension in Africa.
Thank you very much, Sayako. Okay, my presentation will focus on looking at some of experience of Sasakawa Africa Association on digitalization of agriculture extension in Africa. Next. As part of the SA strategy up to 2025, we focus on certain key areas. Most importantly is our mission, which is catalyzing knowledge sharing with African farmers and enabling food, nutrition, and income security in their communities. And through this, we use several strategic approaches on knowledge generation, packaging, transfer, and adoption. We have cross-cutting issues where we bring in the element of inclusivity, where we look at digital transformation to be able to catalyze this knowledge sharing so that farmers can benefit from these agriculture technologies which exist. Next. Next. Okay. What's that? During 2020, when the pandemic started, we faced a lot of challenges. And this was worldwide, where we did an assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on extension delivery. And we found that it led to the lockdown, which created a lot of problems, basically leading to supply chain disruptions, limited movement, and limiting the farmer to extension worker engagement. So at that point, we decided that the best way forward is to develop an e-extension platform, which is all encompassing, whereby we'll harness existing technology applications which are already being developed or have been developed, different companies, institutions, and work together with them, be able to apply this to farmers' needs in several countries in Africa so that we can develop platforms that work, that may bring change. And towards that, we develop pilot projects in response to the COVID-19. Then we started building up this extension platform, the process which is still going on, so that we can plug it into the conventional extension system, be able to address or scale up all these approaches to digital transformation, basically to bridge extension worker to farmer ratio. The e-extension platform, this is plan. Extension agents, engaging technology transfer. We have smallholder farmers, and then we have input dealers and marketers, and they're all working together in tandem. We have interactive information sharing through all these applications based on mobile phones and other technologies. Next. Through that partnership with different institutions and organizations, we've been trying to facilitate technology transfer mechanisms for farmers by using all these ICT approaches, basically to help strengthen the supply chain using ICT, improve farmers' access to services, but most importantly, to integrate youth into agriculture, using their power of innovation, putting all these ICT approaches in their hands to be able to drive the process, because we know that power of innovation can really create change. We're also working very closely with the universities in Africa to establish e-learning platforms which can be accessed by different stakeholders so that we can put information out there which is available at any one time. Next. Next. Okay, let me just give you a few examples of a few countries where we've been working and some of these applications which we're already using as part of the extension platform which we are developing. A good example is in Ethiopia, where we've been able to establish some digitization of extension, through resource centers, providing digital tools and internet access to local government, agriculture extension services, and activates, in different regions across the country. And we've been also using extensively video-mediated extension learning approaches using Pico pocket projector and classroom systems, the video-mediated portable LED systems, which we use to train farmers, accelerate extension services by screening practice videos. Next. And as we move forward, next, it's very important that we put all these applications in the hand of farmers, but also have an interactive exchange with extension personnel. And towards this extent, we've been using a customer relationship management platform called Matrix 24, which is a bi-directional platform which allows information exchange to be transferred remotely between our staff and extension experts in the field, to bring in real-time information to them at any one time. We've also been partnering with a technology company called ICOG Labs to develop this crop-based extension advisory services mobile app called MIDE, which we use to digitalize training materials, provide weather information, and market advisory services, including registration of farm operations and farmer profiles. Next. At the same time, we also have a talking book, basically partnering with a US technology company called IFPRI. This is an audio-enabled device which works as a standalone radio used to directly reach out to low literate farmers using local languages. We also engage radio and TV e-sport messaging that address across the whole cross-section of farmers at regional level and national level. Next. Let's look at what we do in Uganda, where we're making very significant inroads. And in Uganda, we are partnering basically with 3 technology companies which have developed very interesting applications. One is Omulisa, which is a mobile and web-based platform which enables farm and extension workers to be able to engage to get agronomic and market information. Then we have Easy Agric, also an app which enables farmers to access a whole range of services, inputs, advisory services, loans, farm management, markets, then be able to analyze profitability. We also use it to provide linkage services, including markets. Next. And the next one is Akaboxi, which is also an app which enables farmers to digitally conduct financial transactions. We use it for saving and borrowing. All these activities are harnessed together so that we work with extension agents and farmers to use these apps. We train them, we register them, and we distribute smartphones to them, able to use to be able to apply these technologies in the farmers' field and also link farmers to market. Next. Let's look at Nigeria next. In Nigeria, we are working with IIT very closely, Africa Rise, and also with Summit, through the Excellence in Agronomy 2030 use case application or solution, which is a decision-based tool which integrates fertilizer recommendations with relevant agronomic advisories and also site-specific nutrient management, primarily intended for extension agents. And Working together, we've been able to validate 3 different apps for maize, which is Nutrient Expert, for cassava, which is Akilimu, for rice, which is Rice Advice, provide tailored agronomic recommendations and advice on investment prioritization between the 3 crops. Dr. Bernard Vallon, who is giving the next presentation, is going to tell you a little bit more about that. We also work with Rural Farmers Hub, which has a digital platform which enables networking to deliver a whole range of services for farmers and extension agents. Next. At the same time, we carry out quite a bit of activities, developing online training videos, using all sorts of database management systems, national farmer helplines, collaboration with the NILES, radio programs, and training all these extension agents and farmers to be able to use these applications. Next. We also have been able to develop some e-learning platforms in universities, and where we have established pilot learning centers and web-based platforms, initially at Bahida University in Ethiopia, and University of Segu in Mali. We've been able to develop e-learning programs and modular videos for course delivery, and then training and experience sharing, be able to use these more learning approaches and e-modules. Then we'll be able to expand these platforms to universities in Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Uganda. Next. As we finalize, these e-learning platforms are also very important. We've been able to develop some Nigeria learning management systems, which we have deployed in Nigeria and Sierra Leone, able to develop extension training modules which are available online, which are being used by 9 universities in Nigeria, Njala University in Sierra Leone, and University of Segu in Mali, using Moodle model apps to deploy, disseminate information to different value chain actors. Next. This is my last slide. The challenges which we have this digital transformation agenda is poor network coverage due to slow internet connectivity, capacity development requirements very low, so we have to train farmers and extension agents, limited number of relevant e-extension applications and tools. We've learned that the digital platforms can help reduce the cost of extension delivery at farm level and universities, and also strengthen e-extension, e-learning, promote access to more agriculture extension officers, and reduce extension farmer ratio for effective service delivery. Next, thank you very much for listening, and continue to work with the farmer.
Thank you, Dr. Mel, for your holistic overview of SAA experience in terms of digitalization, with full of valuable insights. The next speaker is Dr. Bernard Van Leeuwen, who is the Director for Research for Development, Central Africa and Natural Resource Management at the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture, IITA. Dr. Van Leeuwen is currently leading Excellence in Agronomy Initiative, which is CGIAR, and he's going to share with us his experience in the use of digital application in his project in Nigeria. Dr. Van Leeuwen, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Sayako. And especially thanks for being part of the discussion with Sasakawa Association. Myself, I've been working with Sasakawa Association since 1997. They've been very instrumental in developing Akilimu. It's one example of an innovative digital technology platform focusing on cassava. We usually call this one of the tools to develop locally relevant agronomy recommendations, but at scale. Locally relevant, we usually define in 2 dimensions. One is the sort of resources and production objectives that smallholder farmers have. Here is a sketch on the left of a farm and sketched schematically on the right. And the more land you have, if you have animals, if you have access to cash crops, of course, it changes your decision-making prospects. The second dimension is by physical heterogeneity. This is Google Earth picture from the Brazilian Cerrados. This is a pivot irrigation circle, with 1 kilometer diameter. So there's about 80 hectares of land here. There's maize grown currently, and you can probably assume that every spot, a recommendation for every spot on the circle is probably applicable to any other spot on the circle. Now, if you look at the same scene, the same surface area in an area in Western Kenya, this is what you see. Here you can certainly not say that any recommendation you make for any of those spots is going to be applicable elsewhere, because you see all shades of green and brown on this particular picture. There's about 80 farms here. So that sort of contradiction between locally relevant and being locally relevant at scale was a contradiction that was very hard to resolve about 10 to 20 years ago, because the tools, the data, the workflows did not exist. So 10, 20 years ago, you had to choose whether you work at scale, usually resulting in blanket recommendations, or whether you work site-specific, which then usually means you limit yourself to a few villages and could only reach a few hundred households, probably. Today, we can work locally relevant and at scale, because today we have the tools, we have the analytics, we have everything that's needed to solve that equation. Akilimu is one platform that contains a number of components. It has, as you can see here on the left, crop modeling tools. It has GIS, spatial modeling tools. It has protocols to have multi-locational trial designs. It's linked to a cloud-based prediction engine and a database. And then it also has all the interfaces that link knowledge and learnings to via specific tools, either digitally enabled or even hard copies, that link them to extension agents or farmers directly, so they can actually use and benefit from those learnings. This Akilimu platform took us about the last 5 years probably to develop, and it really started in 2006, I would say, with a number of priority use cases. 6 of them were identified, driven by demand from scaling partners for those tools, for those agronomy solutions. And Sasakawa Association was one of them. I'm sure Mel remembers that. So there is one on the bottom left side, tailored fertilizer recommendations, which I will dwell on a little bit later, because I think it is an important topic nowadays. So each of those use cases, which are basically the description of a particular agronomy solution at scale that's requested by a scaling partner, each of those goes to a development cycle, from a V0 concept to a V1 prototype, going into a validated V2 tool, and then VF, a final version that's ready for scaling, and then that's then added to the Akilimu digital platform. Now, each of those use cases follows at least 4 steps in their development process. Number 1 is the analytical work, the technical work. And this is, I'm going to illustrate for the fertilizer recommendation tool for cassava. So the analytical engine consists of a number of independent models and data sources, starting with water limited yield for cassava. We add nutrient limited yield responses to this, and then there's an optimizer for the economic returns. We've always worked on the principle that for recommendations on fertilizer to be interesting to farmers, we need to maximize the agronomic efficiency of that fertilizer. Also because agronomic efficiency is directly related to value cost, which is of course an important economic indicator. So all this work on maximizing use efficiency is of course extremely relevant nowadays, as was already said a few times by earlier speakers. So this is an example, for instance, of the results of such analytical process, where we see on the left optimal recommendations for urea in 2 states of Nigeria, Benue and Cross River, and on the right, the anticipated yield increase of cassava in ton per hectare. Of course, we do have similar maps for value cost and economic benefits. The second step which is really critical is the validation of those recommendations. And usually to do this, we have very simple designs. Here you see an example of 4 plots. This tool was tested in Nigeria with about 5,000 farmers. You see the dots on the right where these validations took place. And we saw that over 75% recorded increases in yield and profit for cassava. 2% recorded negative impact. So this is similar information, but presented in a graph. So we could see on the left that if we assume that the 80th percentile is representing attainable increases in yield and revenue, we could see that on the left side that for Nigeria, 9.5, and then the blue line for Tanzania, 13 tons per hectare is attainable with an average increase of about 7 to 8 tons. And on the right are the economics, the revenue in US dollars per hectare, which was quite higher for Tanzania than Nigeria because of the prices of the commodities, but 288 for Nigeria and over $800 for Tanzania was attainable. So these are the sort of validation exercises which also allow us to look at risk of non-generation of benefits. The step, of course, is to put all this knowledge into the hands of farmers, and I think Mel already alluded to this. So we are not dismissing printable guides. I think that was mentioned a few times. Digital tools are absolutely the way forward, but we see in quite a number of cases that there is still quite a bit of interest in the sort of more traditional tools for scaling information. We also have the Akilimu app that Mel alluded to, which is available for Android on Google Play Store. And then what we are also investing in substantially is training materials. We see that the human interface between recommendation generated and a farmer using this is still very important, and having this technical support services for extension agents and farmers really remains a critical part of an extension solution. So the fourth thing we do is look at learning, try to see if we can learn from what's happening once farmers have been exposed to or working with some of those recommendations and tools. And we usually quantify this logic around 5 different steps. On the left, we try to quantify if extension agents, the man on the left with the cap is an extension agent, if they gained insights. Then secondly, we then evaluate how many farmers were reached. Then we, on the third step, look at whether farmers continue to use the advisory tools. We then look at whether they've changed practices. And ultimately, we quantify if those changed practices have generated benefits. So we use this 5-step M&E framework to understand whether those recommendations are actually going anywhere. And currently, we have over 400,000 farmers that have been exposed to Akilimu and 260,000 registered users, which are farmers that are going into step 3 continuously using advisory tools. And these are some more data from Nigeria and Tanzania. I'm probably not going to go into detail, but you see we do have some bias towards male users, although our female user base is at least 37-42% in both countries. We've also looked at learning for specific partners, and with the Sasakawa Association, we've seen over 10,000 cassava growers registered with 47% female. We've also seen that in terms of use, we do have a high rate, 75%, both for households that were engaged in demonstration fields and in field days, but we've seen that demonstration fields, which are of course more intense in terms of engagement of people, they result in a higher uptake. So if people changing the way they practice agriculture in cassava systems, they benefit more from demo fields than field days per se, which you could probably anticipate. So this is the sort of information we get in step 4. What we've also seen is that tools, of course, these recommendations are important, but they are not very useful as if they are just a standalone thing. We've seen that bundling services, making sure that the recommendations, the knowledge is there, but the agro-input suppliers, the companies that will buy the produce, the digital advisory service providers, the extension agents, that whole ecosystem needs to operate jointly and efficiently for recommendations to really be taken up. And this is currently the way we are trying to set up our agronomy R&D in the context of this multi-stakeholder platforms providing multiple services. Currently, Akilimo is working with over 200 partners in Nigeria and Tanzania. This is just an extract of this. And in the new initiative, which we call Excellence in Agronomy for Sustainable Intensification and Climate Adaptation, we are actually advancing this learning that we've gathered over the years at a global level in Africa and also in other regions with over 10 CGIAR centers on all sorts of cropping systems and agroecologies. So we want to invest in this for the next 10 years and see where we end up with this type of tools and information. So thanks for your attention and interest, and looking forward to any questions or comments you may have. Over to you, Jaco.
Thank you very much, Dr. Van Leeuwen, for sharing with us your hands-on experience with very practical, innovative digital technology, Akilimo. The next speaker is another colleague of mine from Sasakawa Africa Association, Mr. Joseph Babemba, who is the Deputy Country Director of SAA Uganda. He will share with us SAA's experience in developing a sustainable farmer association model in Uganda. Please go ahead, Joseph.
Thank you very much, Sayako, for moderating this so far. What I'm sharing is a case of Uganda on the One-Stop Center Association model in a digitally enabled private service provision. My name is Bemba Joseph, the Deputy Country Director of Sasakawa Africa Association, Uganda. I will give you a brief background to the OSCAR model, the objectives of forming the OSCAR, and then a particular case of Zero Agari Awamu Agribusiness Training Association, ZABTA, which is one of the OSCARs that Sasakawa has established, and then talk about how they have integrated the e-extension and the digital marketing at ZABTA, and if time allows, a few success factors. Now, the One-Stop Center Association concept was initiated to respond to sustainability concern, and at the same time, the approach aims at giving rural populations access to agricultural services through farmer-owned and farmer-managed associations. When you look at the conceptualization figure on the side, we have individual farmers who have no influence and disorganized, and then you have groups with limited influence and limited membership, but also limited management and leadership skills. Then Sasakawa went and elevated this to form high-level farm organizations, which are the OSCARs, with an intent of increased influence, organized membership, and aggregation of demand for services and better leadership and management. This OSCAR model was started in Uganda in 2001, and we have established over 14 one-stop center associations. The objectives of the OSCAR were to facilitate capacity building of groups and members on leadership, business management, and entrepreneurship skills, but also enable farmers to access demand-driven agricultural value chain development support services, improve the quality of farmers' produce to meet emerging market demands, foster collective action along the value chain, looking at training, access to credit, production, bulking, and marketing, and finally promote the development of income-generating activities for farmer groups and its members. Now, the case we are looking at is ZABTA, and within ZABTA, ZABTA was established in 2004 in Rural District in Uganda, and it has currently 4,922 members, with the 45% being youth, and these are organized
this association is composed of 96 farmer groups. It offers services to over 20,000 farmers beyond its catchment area in a rural district to 6 other districts, looking at a number of enterprises like rice, soybean, maize, beans, and horticulture. Among the services offered by Zabuta include input service provision, tractor hire services, where they have now currently 2 tractors, digital profiling of its members, offering extension services, produce buying, and they also manage a seed bank where members can access inputs, but also they offer private service provision through offering specialized post-harvest equipment to help farmers improve on the quality of their produce. And of course, bulking is a key activity that they offer. So they offer transport services to members to bulk and mobilize their produce. But most importantly, they have gone into value addition and agro-processing, where they are milling maize and rice. And what you see there is one of their branded products. They currently employ over 32 staff, and everybody has had the talk about village agents. And Sasakawa is proud as being one of the immediate proponents or drivers of the village agent model, which we call the CATS, or the Community Association Trader model, where we have trained both those that are acting as private, but also those that offer extension services as community-based facilitators or change agents. Specifically in 2001, I just want to share with you a quick of how business translated for them. They bulked over 2,800 metric tons of maize, fetching that amount of dollars. 1,200 metric tons of soybean with that value. 640 metric tons of beans, fetching $714. And then upland rice, where they sold 1,600 metric tons. And to cap it all, besides farmers' mobilization of savings, they offer soft loans to farmers for production. And you can see the amount of money they have been able to offer to their members. Like Dr. Mel has presented and everybody else, SAA has been engaged in several ICT for agriculture companies to enhance extension, digital trade, and access to financial services. And several extension agents and farmer groups have received smartphones to enable them access extension information, weather updates and market information, garden mapping and profiling, as I will highlight. But also, one of the uniquenesses with this one-stop center association, Zabuta, is the ability to demonstrate opportunities for youth along the different value chain nodes for the enterprises that they are promoting. When you look at input supply, we have youth who are currently engaged in input supply. We have youth who are offering specialized production support services in terms of spraying, whether it is planting. They are involved at post-service handling, where they act as private service providers to offer post-service equipment to improve on quality of produce. Some are involved in transport using the tricycles to mobilize farmers' produce and deliver it to Zabuta warehouse. And others are involved in trading of the milled rice, where they come, take the milled rice from the Zabuta and take it and sell it and earn a commission off that. And several other services that they offer, which does not necessarily require them to be involved in the actual production, but they can participate across the whole value chain. When you look at e-extension and the digitalization process, all members of Zabuta are digitally profiled using the EasyAgric application, which was developed by Accordion, and Sasakawa has greatly been working with some of these service providers to actually improve the services they offer by supporting them to even develop material which they upload and share with farmers. Using the same application, input stocking and supply are made to allow farmers to access inputs they need in a timely manner. But also we have learned that through this approach, costs are reduced and at the same time farmers are getting quality inputs. I want to share some other scenario where Zabuta is a member of a network of producers and exporters of Uganda. They are actually holding the offices of Nepal with 37 registered members, and 28 of these are cooperatives. And it deals with 67 off-takers in Kenya, and that is across now the border under the Agro-Processors Association of Kenya, APAC. So they use WhatsApp for them to transact business where orders are shared among members based on capacity. And negotiation for price is made between the buyer and the supplier. So once the order has been submitted to the WhatsApp group, within the members, they agree who has the produce. And then payment is made either direct, and sometimes it is pre-payment to enable these people to handle transaction-related issues. So they are either advanced money through the supplier or through the network's bank account. Now, another interesting part to this is the network works with a platform of transporters from Kenya, and this network updates Nepal on the available trucks, lorries that bring goods into Uganda or Sudan or Congo. And these are electronically tracked and are engaged based on the route and the available orders. So for example, if the produce is coming from the northern part of Uganda, they will be tracking or using trucks that have delivered goods to Sudan or Congo. And Nepal works with clearing agents to ease movement and ensure timely delivery of these orders across the border. What they do here is, because of the electronic provision, they are able to get the details of the truck, the driver, the amount of produce that has been loaded onto the truck, and then they work with the clearing agents at the border. By the time the truck arrives, it is easier for them to get through the border. And up to today, since 2020, when this started, no produce has been reported to have been lost, or neither has anybody suffered. Now, what are some of the success factors that have enabled Zabuta in particular, and the whole concept of the One-Stop Center Association to work? Leadership is very critical when you are going to allow and enable the model to work. You need to have a very strong leadership that is focused, quite exposed, relatively educated. So it's not one where you just bring in any typical leadership of the farmer group, as the farmer groups that are formed the association, but they need to get somebody who is a little bit more enlightened. But also, the key for the success of the Oscar model, especially at Zabuta, has been the partnerships that Sasakawa built with the government of Uganda, whether it is central or local government and other development partners and value chain actors for layering of interventions. When you go at Zabuta, you will see a layering of activities by different partners, because Sasakawa could not do everything that today Zabuta is doing. So the layering of activities by different partners has been very key, and that consistency has enabled Zabuta to reach where it is. I remember in 2010, they had transactions of less than $2,000 US, but today when you look at the figures that I earlier showed, you can see that huge progress. The understanding of the business model and the value chain proposition of the Oscar is key. You know, when you look at the Oscar, it's a business model of its own. And if the Oscar cannot pitch the value proposition to the members, then membership itself is affected. And without a good number of members joining the Oscar, they are not able to aggregate the volumes they need, and they are not able to do the business that they are currently engaged in. Also key for their growth is cooperation among cooperatives. This is a very key principle as far as cooperative development is concerned. So when you look at all the operations of ZABTA, they have gone beyond their geographical catchment area to work with other cooperatives in other areas. And this has also contributed to their success. And most importantly is the trust among the value chain actors. When you look at everybody, the banks, the traders across the border, the farmers who supply, they need to have the trust, and minus this, nobody can succeed. And I think through this whole process, we can see now traceability has been enforced. Farmers are beginning to adhere to good quality parameters as required by the consumers across. And I can go on and on to share several factors, but I want to be also considerate to the time factor. Thank you very much. Let's keep working with the farmer.
Thank you, Joseph, for sharing with us another unique and insightful case study of ZAPTA, one of the successful one-stop center associations in Uganda. Now, before we get into the panel discussion, I would like to invite Dr. Mel Oloch to moderate this session. Dr. Mel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sayako. And my name is Mel Oloch, Strategic Partnerships Director at Sasakawa Africa Association. Feel very much honored to share this panel session on how to contextualize multidimensional agriculture extension system initiatives as a means to scale up agriculture innovations, achieve sustainable productivity and resilience of smallholder farmers in Africa. Today, we have with us a distinguished panel who are representing different organizations specialized in agricultural research and development and digitally enabled systems. And their scopes really vary from training to international development, impact systems, and pluralistic extension. So please let me just introduce them for 1 minute so that you can know the panelists who we have here. And I would like to request them to be able to turn on their video so that participants can be able to see them. First is, I would like to introduce Professor Tomoyuki Naito. Hope I got that right. He is the Vice President and Professor at Graduate School of Information Technology at the Kobe Institute of Computing in Japan. He has worked in the digital economic sector in order to accelerate policy and strategy formulation for effective development, in particular using ICT to leapfrog practice in developing countries. He has been a senior advisor in charge of ICT at JICA, program manager at the World Bank, in charge of Tokyo Development Learning Center, and a member of the Global Steering Committee of the Internet for All project at the World Economic Forum. Please welcome Professor Naito. The next is Dr. Yvonne Pinto, who has a very wide experience in Africa and is currently the Director of Bioeconomy at AgBio at Eagle Genomics in the UK. And she has been the lead specialist for digital agriculture innovation at the World Bank and has been a long-term managing director of Agriculture Learning and Impacts Network Limited. She has worked in various portfolios with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Gatsby Foundation, the UN, the Center for Environmental Policy at Imperial College in London. Please welcome Yvonne to this panel. The next one is Mr. Shinjiro Amamaeshi, who is the Deputy Director General for Economic Development Department at JICA in Japan. Very much responsible for agricultural and rural development in Africa, Middle East, and Europe. He has been a project coordinator of agriculture and rural development project in Laos, young professional officer at FAO, program formulation advisor in JICA in Tanzania, and the most recent senior representative of JICA in Kenya. And lastly, I would like to introduce Ms. Yenenesh Bezabi, who is the Director of Agriculture Extension in the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia, has been very, very instrumental in the formulation and planning of the pluralistic extension strategy and coordination in Ethiopia, as well as promoting strong research extension to farmer linkages in Ethiopia. And is also working on digital extension and advisory services. I wish to welcome these distinguished members of this panel. The multidimensional approach basically is a natural progression in understanding the complexity of extension systems and has been presented in this particular forum. We need to understand that the approach provides a framework of context to which component technologies can be scaled up to help improve adoption. So let's hear from our distinguished panelists. And I'd like to start with Professor Tomoyuki Naito, the Kobe Institute of Computing. Tomoyuki, if I may just ask you, agriculture extension can benefit greatly from the use of modern information and communication technologies. Looking at your experience, despite 2 decades of promising experiences, this potential is not fully realized. And one of the causes probably for the failure has been a focus on pushing certain technologies rather than responding to the needs of potential users who are the farmers. My question is, how can user-centered design methods help specifying both problems and digital solutions in agriculture extension? If you can give us your perspective, please, just about 3 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, Dr. Mel. That's a very great question. Actually, first of all, I'd like to express my great respect to yourself, Dr. Mel. Thanks very much. It is really my pleasure to be in this the great panel. Then, just to straight answer to your question, Dr. Mel, it is because the reason why I said that this is my great respect to you. Your question is that because discussing this question based on the period of, you said 2 decades, is the reasonable period for the speed of ICT evolution. And also proceeding with these discussions from the user's point of view, user-centered point of view is very substantive to the issue of agriculture digitization in Africa. The reason why is that over the past 20 years, over the 2 decades, the world's ICT has evolved dramatically, as we all know that. Research says that the total amount of data created, captured, copied, and consumed globally reached over 60 zettabytes in 2020. At the beginning of the century, which is the 20 years ago, the same defined data volume was terabytes level only. So that means that the data volume increased some billion times in 20 years. So that is the ICT evolution. This technological innovation or evolution has dramatically benefited Africa's regional economies as well. However, I have a very big question. Has the agricultural sector in Africa benefited from this digital evolution during the same period? My answer is no. The income of the small farmers in sub-Saharan Africa has never been proportional to GDP growth in the region. And in many countries, smartphone penetration is still insufficient among small farmers. By the way, about almost three months ago, which was the late May, I had the opportunity to visit the rural areas in Uganda at the request of Sasakawa Africa Foundation. What surprised me most was that the development of mobile communication infrastructure was progressing more than I expected. And unit price of smartphone devices has fallen dramatically compared to 5 years ago. Actually, I purchased one Chinese-made smartphone, which is called Techno. That was only $100, but the functionality is sufficiently good. So actually, you can imagine that how those kind of prices are decreased. But on the other hand, the power shortage in rural area is still severe. I experienced blackout when I went to the rural area. The last mile of mobile communication is still poor, still in progress. And mobile communication cost, internet cost, is still high relative to the actual farmers' income level. So these challenges actually have led to the reality that the small farmers in rural area still don't feel the benefits of digitalization and the spread of mobile phones. We all know that smartphones are available. As I said, $100 is maybe reasonable for the other people in the city, but not necessary to all the farmers yet. Therefore, user-centered design methods, which you mentioned, are really crucial in improving the productivity through the promotion of digitization in African agriculture. And we must always have this perspective at the very beginning. Otherwise, 20 years later, maybe we will have the same argument of today. So my simple summary is that to do the approach for the small farmers for digitization have to be simplified, user-centric, and scalable. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Naito. Just put in context, smartphones are now as cheap as even about $30 to $40 for a number of countries in Africa. Prices are really going down. And we'll have another question for you in a few minutes. But, let me quickly move over to Dr. Pinto. Dr. Pinto is a foremost an impact evaluation specialist who carried out a lot of impact evaluation for many donor-funded projects in Africa. Meeting SDGs requires assessing trade-offs and synergies across divergent goals and robust policy impact evaluation. Now, my question to you is, how can we assess the impacts of digital agriculture extension programs and investments on improving social impacts, such as poverty, malnutrition, and infant mortality?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mel. And I'd like to give my thanks to you personally and to the organizers for inviting me here today. Most of my experience is based on actually carrying out landscape studies in about 22 African countries of the full digital landscape in agriculture. So I'm going to restrict my comments to that experience alone. But before I do that, let me just say that the Sustainable Development Goals are challenging in many ways. Their forerunners, the Millennium Development Goals, were thought to be inadequate because they were established to address key issues in development, and they didn't necessarily address imbalances and inequalities within countries, but they were quite well specified. Our colleagues, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, have 169 targets and are more complex. Each of them has a list of specific targets. Some suggest this reflects the true complexity of development. Others feel they're too broad or uneven. But what has been understood in monitoring them is that monitoring targets will have regional socioeconomic differences and are most meaningful on a country-specific basis. In this way, they provide insights to policymakers. So these goals and targets are also interrelated. For example, fertility rates decrease when child mortality is low, and as fertility rates fall, GDP often increases, and that in turn creates child mortality rates which fall. Some of the SDGs are reinforcing, others may work in conflict with one another. For example, poverty alleviation and economic growth may have negative effects on climate change. So I think we have to understand that there are significant trade-offs in the measurement world. When we come to measuring digital agricultural extension programs, it is similar. Attention must be given to how individual activities lead to outputs and outcomes, and that these can be tracked as part of a system. And in that system, there will be inevitable trade-offs and synergies which operate. It's important to think about why you would use digital agriculture tools, where they are most necessary, and how they improve and contribute to outputs and outcomes. It's very clear from looking at models that are available, including Sasakawa's model, that providing training to extension professionals through networks of accredited universities will clearly improve knowledge and skills in those individuals. As institutions which contain these individuals, entrepreneurship can be inspired and partnership can be created with rural players, which can drive digitization into rural areas. At the same time, institutions can mainstream that capacity into those environments, which may increase inclusion and benefit for farmers. Well-trained extension agents can work very well to advance aspects of production, diversification, aggregation, marketing, post-harvest management, storage and processing, and including entrepreneurship that leads to more employment of an inclusive nature, including women and youth. Market-oriented technologies that leverage financial technology, fintech, which increases access to capital and credit such as loans, can link farmers to markets and more reliably ensure that post-harvest losses are kept to a minimum. Processors can also handle quality produce and increase the value to consumers in terms of the quality, the nutritional density, and indeed the ultimate nutritional value of these foods. But these interventions require careful mapping, both to ensure that indicators to measure their effectiveness and efficiency are available, and to ensure that there are no unintended adverse consequences of their scaling. Digitization, in an interesting way, offers a unique level of traceability and transparency in value chains, both financial and transactional, and indeed helps to improve the levels of safety for consumers. These contributions in the form of measuring impacts on farmers specifically can include measuring farmer incomes due to improved market access. They can measure aspects related to dietary diversity in farming households, or indeed increasing patterns of consumption or the purchase of complementary foodstuffs that can assess the potential for reduced malnutrition in children. The relationship with infant mortality may be a very similar pathway to what we already know about rising levels of GDP and falling levels of fertility in women. So it's very important that we think about the measurement of digital agricultural successes in a systemic way. Let me leave it there for the moment. Thank you, Dr. Mel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yvonne, for those valuable insights. And most important thing here is looking at it in a systematic way. We'll come back to it in a few minutes again. Let's quickly move to another member of our panel, who is Mr. Shinjiro Amamaeshi, Deputy Director General of JICA. Mr. Amamaeshi, poverty has many dimensions, including unemployment, economic dependence, inability to provide basic needs, and many other areas. The result has created a situation which contributes to environmental degradation. And quite a number of countries rely on nationwide policy initiatives of the central government to lift millions of people out of poverty. In your understanding, how can my multidimensional extension services sector help reduce poverty among rural smallholder producers in Africa? And you could share your perspectives based on your experiences at JICA and the long years that you spent in Africa working in this specific sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bell. So I really think that the multidimensional extension services are one of the effective extension tool in Africa, because the number of extension workers is limited in Africa. There are a flagship program in agriculture sector in Africa, such as the CADAP. Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program and the Malabo Declaration both call for the 10% allocation of the national budget to the agriculture sector. However, most of countries haven't yet achieved it. Therefore, currently the small number of extension workers are allocated. I believe that the face-to-face agriculture extension is the most effective way, but it is difficult in the current situation. However, by using the digital tool, it becomes possible to access small holders who cannot be approached by the present extension workers now. So I realize that the use of the digital tool has rapidly proceeded in agriculture sector since the 2020. So because of the COVID-19, the JICA has also started using the digital tool. For example, during the COVID-19 period, the JICA experts in Africa were obliged to be back to Japan for evacuation. However, they didn't stop the project activities because they started using the digital tools. They continued online. They continued working by using the online tools for meeting. And now these tools become typical communication tool for the project activities. And the project holding the training for extension workers and farmers by using digital meeting tools. And the digital tools are also used for the giving advices for farmers. The WhatsApp groups are created in many projects. The digital tools are also used for the face-to-face extension activities. For example, the extension workers are using tablet for collecting information from farmers and compiling and showing the result and giving recommendations to farmers on tablet. I believe that the use of the digital tool in agriculture extension services will further progress in the future because these are very convenient and effective tools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Njiro, for that valuable insight, using digital tools to be able to benefit most projects and farmers directly. We'll come back to you in a minute. I'd like to move to Madam Yenenesh Bezabi, who is the Director of Extension in the Ministry of Agriculture in Ethiopia. Madam Yenenesh, agriculture extension, as we know, is a non-formal type of education which provides advisory services to deal with the growing needs of smallholder farmers. On the other hand, governments have tested so many extension systems which are yet effectively solve the ineffective technology transfer mechanisms which are going on between the researcher, farmer, and extension worker. In your view, what multidimensional agriculture extension reforms being implemented in Ethiopia can improve adoption of agriculture technology?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mel. This is a very interesting and timely question for me about the multi-dimensional extension approach. As we all know, the farmer, pastoralist, and agro-pastoralist technology demand is now growing. The government interest for export and substitution of import also maximized. Agriculture faces a complex problem like new pest and disease occurrences, one of the challenge, like fall armyworm, desert locust, livestock disease, mango scale. Such kind of problems is aggravating the agriculture problems currently. Droughts, flood, the population growth also another challenges for agricultural extension. The increment of input price, the soil salinity, soil acidity, generally soil fertility, also a problem. The production and productivity not as expected. The consumer preference also maximized. Therefore, we need to think about multi-dimensional approach for extension and advisory service. We have to see a different category of farmer. For example, there is food insecure farmer, food secured farmer, like the model farmer. And also we have to engage different extension and advisory service providers like private sector, agro dealers, cooperatives, unions, and also higher learning institution working on extension, and NGOs working on agricultural extension and advisory service. Customized and area-specific extension and advisory service also needed currently. We have to give alternative and choice for our farmers and pastoralists. We have to give focus for inclusive extension, for which is like woman inclusive, youth inclusive, nutrition, climate smart agriculture, agricultural risk management also one of the focus area currently. We have to work on mechanization like large, medium and small scale mechanization, woman-friendly technology also another area. Post-harvest management, agro-processing needs attention. We need to introduce organic fertilizer because the inorganic fertilizer cost is increment is a problem for our farmers. The soil fertility needs treatment. Generally, we have to design the new multi-dimensional extension system, multi-dimensional extension approach, multi-dimensional methods also needed. The Ministry of Agriculture also in Ethiopia working by considering those mentioned issues. We are designing multi-dimensional ICT-based digital extension, pluralistic extension type of approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yaninesh. Your experience here in Ethiopia speaks for itself. And we'll come back to you again in a minute. Let me have another round of a few questions for each of you again, and let's go back to Professor Naito. Based on the presentation that you saw of Mr. Joseph Babemba on private service provision, over the past few years, this kind of model of providing agriculture services across the entire value chain have emerged. A cost-effective, multi-dimensional model that can cater to the needs of many farmers. However, these models are yet to outperform the use of the local labor, the farm level, any typical African farm field, from the perspective of the smallholder farmers. What extent can we explore the use of digital platforms to enable improved efficiency, the functional labor availability at farm level in the African landscape? And if you could probably just take 2 minutes, we'd be very much grateful for that.
All right, thanks very much, Dr. Ahmad. That's very important part, and I have a very strong opinion on that aspect. Actually, we need to seriously face the issue of digital literacy more and more than ever. It is the public interest, actually. And we cannot expect to progress or improve the digital literacy issue if we just rely only on the private sector's effort. While the agriculture sector contribute to the GDP in the African region most, actually it is also the sector, the agriculture sector is the sector which the lowest digital literacy among its workers. So in other words, increasing the digital literacy of agriculture sector in the region among the workers will not only help the development of the farming service by digital, but also significantly positively affect the country or the regions, the growth as a whole. Furthermore, it is also fundamental condition that will accelerate the digitalization of the entire country, entire region that is being promoted in African countries. So to improve productivity through the expanded use of the digital platforms, such as the Accordion or the MMRIMIZA or EasyAgric and so on, as mentioned in your question, it is impossible to achieve the significant cost effectiveness simply by spreading smartphones around and investing in communication infrastructure. It requires simultaneous combination of policy, finance, and education. Therefore, the government, industry, and academia must take their medium-term, not short-term, medium-term perspective in collaboration effort to raise digital literacy at the small-scale farm level. There is no other shortcut, I believe. I think the birds are starting to emerge in Uganda and Nigeria, as previous presenters mentioned in the previous presentation, where the Sasakawa Africa Foundation is working on the digitization of agriculture extension. In Uganda, for example, Makerere University, in partnership with the Sasakawa Africa Foundation, invest a lot resources in extension workers level education and practice agriculture digitization. It is significant initiative. In addition, the Sasakawa Africa Foundation is using its funds, or own funds, to fund the collaborate with the local agricultural digital platforms such as MMRIMIZA or the EasyAgric and so on, as previously mentioned, to try the digitization of agriculture extension, including digital literacy training as well. But what is lacking here is the government intervention and support, increasing the public support from the Ugandan government and the international development organizations such as JICA or the World Bank for the efforts of Makerere University and the Sasakawa Africa Foundation will eventually contribute directly to improve the productivity of the entire agriculture sector. That's my strong opinion. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for that strong opinion. The key issue here is ensuring that we raise the literacy levels to be able to harness the power of digitalization in our agriculture systems, and we really appreciate that. Moving forward to Dr. Pinto again, there's a growing interest in improving agriculture extension by digital media, which is really, really high, because the established methods have not always achieved desired outcomes in terms of technology adoption or livelihood improvement. Could you, in your best opinion, elaborate more on how multidimensional approaches and initiatives generate better impact outcomes, and how can we speed up this process for farmers to get access to these decision-making tools and applications? Yeah, about
Thank
2
you so
minutes.
much. Thank you so much, Dr. Mel. I'll try and make it really concise. I'm going to restrict my answers to the livelihood improvements as a result of digital agriculture. We know that many of these multidimensional approaches are necessary to address the many constraints farmers face, particularly to information asymmetry, to address poor levels of literacy, financial literacy or lack of financial literacy, unpredictable weather and climate, and the risks facing farmers. The challenge is translating information in a way that it is both understandable and topical for farmers. But that's not really enough. Farmers need to make decisions on their agricultural systems in light not just of information, but they also require logistics, opportunities to rent tractors or trucks or transport their goods to markets. They require links to processors and finance to help them aggregate, store, and transport their produce. They require payment options to invest into these resources, both in terms of farms and families, but they also need to be able to procure services and products. They need to be able to pay for them, etc. Digital media can play a role in transmitting information in local languages within the context that's relevant. that is meaningful to farmers and for those who struggle to understand how to save and pay using digital money, or indeed information to spray their crops, etc. I think Professor Naito mentioned very much about the importance of user-centered design in these processes. There is also a role for things like machine reading and AI to provide interpretation or gamification to identify how best to reach them through which mediums, and to provide that bespoke advice or predictive information. The information suddenly provided for farming activities can also be combined with things like social safety nets, particularly Ghana's LEAP program is a good example. They also need perhaps to have elements like carbon credits attached to them. So I'm trying to paint the picture now of livelihood gains, which are not just agricultural sector pieces. They are part of a connected landscape of livelihoods more generally. I also want to talk about climate, because combining satellite data and weather information and enabling drones to be used requires regulation and policy to be able to tag digitally tag livestock, to provide traceability, to use soil sensors to measure moisture, or indeed solar panels to facilitate irrigation, requires an enabling environment. So I do believe that the levels of mobile phone penetration are increasing. These opportunities begin to outline the scale and the transformative level of change. There is a question in the chat which relates to, to what extent have countries got these infrastructural pieces. The FAO have a report that is on the status of digital agriculture in 47 sub-Saharan African countries. That gives you a good idea of what's there. But all of these efforts in digital agriculture are not a panacea. Digital literacy is problematic from policy makers to farmers to institutional players. The IFC have a report that say 4 out of 5 new jobs in the African landscape will require digital skills. Policies must be encouraged to ensure farmers are respected, their consent is provided. So privacy and cybersecurity on these platforms is really critical. There is much on the policy front required to ensure access to the technologies, the enabling environment to advance them, the financial environment to scale companies providing them, so that the continent can become a food basket, not only for greater self-sufficiency, but as potentially a source of returns for the continent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive, response, which puts a lot of this into context. And then we have 2 final questions, and one is going to, again, to Mr. Shinjiro. We are aware that the creation of commercialization opportunities to smallholder farmers has taken primacy on the development agenda of many developing countries. Based on your long years of experience in the development sector, especially in Africa, you do understand that most of the smallholders are less productive than commercial farmers, continue to lag behind in commercialization. Limited access to extension services is one of the underlying constraints to this low productivity. In your best opinion, how can we harness multidimensional and pluralistic extension services to solve this critical challenge?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mer. That is quite important question. As some panelists and some presenter already raised the examples, I think that the multidimensional extension services, in other words, the digital tool in agriculture sector, are quite effective and will further progress in Africa. In my understanding, the way of utilization of the data tool can be divided into 2. One is for agricultural extension activities, and second one is food value chain development. The first one, the agricultural extension activities, yes, there are big possibilities for utilization as some examples are introduced. for example, the implementation of the training for farmers, and by using the online tools and the data collection, analysis, and showing results for farmers by using a tablet. And another one is the data tool can be used as a survey tool like the GIS, GPS. And another aspect, food value chain development. Yes, for example, the yes, online procurement of the input, agricultural input, such as seed and fertilizers, and distribution of the weather and the market information. In addition, the digital finance will further progress in the future. However, the question is whether farmers are fully satisfied with the present services by using the data tools. Yes, it is one of the challenges. So in order to bring benefit to farmers, there are some challenges. The first one is the improvement of the digital divide. Yes, as Dr. Naito suggested, the price of the smartphone in the rural area in Africa is decreasing compared with before. However, the people in the city is more enjoying the digital tools. And another digital divide is literacy. Yes, it is also suggested by the panelist. Yes, it is also a challenge. But the most important thing is to develop provide services to meet the needs of farmers. I think that currently the interest of the service provider side is more considered than the needs of farmers. My opinion is the needs of farmers should be incorporated into the future services. The future expected services through digital tools are providing benefit to farmers and little risk for farmers and easy understanding for farmers. I believe that these services will lead to the sustainable improvement with the benefit of smallholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shinjiro, for that, again, giving your insights in this critical area in multidimensional agriculture extension, which is really valuable and interesting. Now, we have a final question for Ms. Yenenesh. Madam Yenenesh, agriculture, if you look at the public extension is envisioned as a fundamental part of the process of transforming smallholder farmers because it is a major source of agriculture information. However, widespread concern over the inefficiency of these extension approaches in driving sustainability, with little or no impact at all at the farmer level in most cases. What is the potential of transforming these extension systems using a hybrid system that integrates digital technology approaches? Just 2 minutes. Oh, you are muted.
Okay, currently digital literacy is also a good potential for us. Social media expansion also another potential. Many young agricultural solution providers also using digital technology. So the government commitment, donor interest, there are digital strategy in Ethiopia. There are digital ICT strategy in the Ministry of Agriculture, 10 years plan, also pluralistic extension and advisory service also designing in the Ministry of Agriculture to invite the private sector and other stakeholders. So based on those potentials, Ministry of Agriculture distributed more than 35,000 tablets for development agents for extension and advisory service, which support us extension to enhance the message and the content, enhance reporting feedback mechanism also to transfer up-to-date information for our farmers. We also mapped organizations working on digital extension. We established platform in digital extension and advisory service. Finally, the roadmap developed for digital extension and advisory service. There are also some initiatives working in the Ministry of Agriculture with different partners, 8028 free hotline to deliver seasonal message for extension. IVR also interactive voice response. There are also help desk at district level to respond the farmers' different question. We are also working with farmer research interactive, supported by research type of radio program. We also have good work relationship with Digital Green, e-extension with Sasakawa, hybrid or blended type of training approach also we have. 20% of the training we are giving in demonstration-based in-person training, and 80% of the training is given for the development agent, for the subject matter specialist in online using different mobile application also, like for e-locust and disease-related activities. So currently the ministry reformed the whole extension system. The extension already revised, assessed, and the new pluralistic extension designed, the digital extension and advisory service roadmap designed, the linkage also another area of our intervention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yanesh, for those key specific examples, which give a very strong perspective of what is going on, in the field in real sense. And the key takeaway message here is that, while e-extension has been happening for some time, I think the efforts have been quite exploratory in nature, but we are building up on that. And it was never positioned as a sole method of transferring information and conducting training. Nevertheless, it is expected that more intensive use of ICT approaches can help improve the performance of agriculture extension initiatives, especially engaging digital literacy and investment, and being able to put all these gadgets in the hands of those who need it to be able to scale up and scale out all these agriculture technologies. I wish to take this opportunity to thank all of the panelists for your valuable comments. And with that, we are running short of time a little bit, but we have some questions and answers, which is down there at the screen, as you can see, and we'll take sufficient time, the panelists and the presenters, to be able to answer those.
Dr. Mel.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are behind the schedule quite badly, so please allow us to skip Q&A session, but we will try to answer to questions from the audience at a later day on our website. I'm sorry.
That is perfectly all right, Sayak.
Okay.
You read my mind. Yeah.
Okay. So now let us move to the very final item.
Thank you.
Concluding remark on the way forward. Our speaker is Ms. Charlotte Haber-Brandt, Director of Communication and Public Affairs at IFPRI. She has previously served as the President of the International Food and Agriculture Trade Policy Council and has extensive experiences in researching and communicating about the food and agriculture policy topics. Ms. Haber-Brandt, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sayaku. I will try to be very brief in my concluding remarks. First of all, it's really a pleasure to be here co-hosting this event with Sasakawa and AAFS. We love our collaboration with both of these organizations, and I've been very impressed with the really very informative presentations of all the speakers. Let me just say that since this is a side event at TCAD 8, I want to congratulate the government of Japan for its vision in founding TCAD back in 1993 at a very crucial moment in history. It was the end of the Cold War. There was concern about whether development funding would continue to go to developing countries, and they stepped in to put together this very important conference. We're now in the 8th iteration of that. And of course, this iteration is taking place at another very crucial time in history. We are impacted now by the burdens caused by the so-called triple C, and that is climate change, COVID, and conflict, which, as we've heard today, are leading to a very significant food and fertilizer price crisis. Or as Ruth Onyango has said, we are living in a very overwhelming world. So it's also great that Japan will be assuming the G7 presidency as of next year and has another tremendous opportunity there to reinforce the importance of development and food security in Africa at this crucial time. I'm delighted to share these concluding remarks on a panel with Dr. Kitanaka. Again, thank you for co-hosting this event with us, and our organizations share a great interest in promoting greater productivity and empowerment of smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. Let's quickly take a step back and reflect on the SDG agenda, the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. And it's actually very timely for us to do that because the UN only recently released its update. As you know, there's an annual update on how we are doing with regard to progress to meet those 17 SDGs. And not surprisingly, unfortunately, the news are not good. And in a nutshell, the world is not on track to meet the SDGs. As I said before, the confluence of crises dominated by COVID-19, climate change, and conflicts are creating spin-off impacts on food and nutrition, health, education, the environment, and peace and security. The COVID-19 pandemic wiped out more than 4 years of progress on poverty eradication and pushed 93 million more people into extreme poverty just in 2020. That is prior to some of the subsequent increases. We now have 1/4 of the global population living in conflict-affected countries. A record 100 million people have been forcibly displaced worldwide. We also have heard today developing countries are battling record inflation, rising interest rates, and looming debt burdens, and many are struggling unsuccessfully to recover from the pandemic. And maybe just briefly, we can pull up the progress report in particular on SDG 1, no poverty, and SDG 2, zero hunger. We have one infographic on that. In SDG 1 on no poverty, we've seen that 4 years, more than 4 years of the previous progress we've made to fight poverty has been erased by COVID. And under SDG 2, it's worth highlighting that 1 in 10 people are now suffering from hunger and 1 in 3 lack regular access to adequate food. 47 countries were affected by soaring food prices, and that compares to only 16% back in 2019. And we've heard also that the Ukraine crisis has triggered food shortages for the world's poorest people. If we take a look at Africa in particular, the Economic Commission of Africa released a special report tracking progress towards the SDGs back in 2020. It was only launched in February of this year. And in 2020, about half of the African continent globally was only achieving halfway towards achieving the SDG goals, which of course means there's a lot more to be done. And those numbers are probably worse in 2022. 40% of Africans still live in extreme poverty. So to take this back to the topic of our day, we know, of course, that extension has always been vitally important, but even more so in this very, very challenging environment. And it can play a tremendous role in ag transformation, which in turn, of course, will help meet us or make up for lost progress in reaching the SDGs. So I'm not going to repeat all the great promise of using multidimensional and digitally enabled extension services. I think our speakers have done a terrific job of talking about the many, many services this technology can provide. Maybe just to highlight that I love the fact that Beth Dunford's painted a picture of this being really attractive for youth, which I think is very important considering the growing youthful population in Africa. And I also really was struck by Bernard van Lauw's point that we now have the technology to provide recommendations. In his case, he was speaking about fertilizer recommendations, both in a site-specific way, but also at scale. So that is a huge breakthrough, I think, and explains why the CGIAR is now focusing much more than perhaps we have historically on agronomy. But despite the great promise of this multidimensional digital-enabled extension, we still have a long way to go. And again, many of our distinguished speakers spoke to some of the challenges that are remaining. We unfortunately, a lot of the work has only impacted a small number of smallholders. I mean, large number, but in the big context of how many smallholders there are in Africa, we need to increase that percentage, obviously. We still need to fill the gaps. There are still gaps in mobile coverage, prices. We're still dealing with power shortages and so on. And I think it's important, sometimes we have this vision of fancy technological solutions as being somehow sexy and automatically taken up by people, but that is not the case. And I think here today we heard that it's really important to develop these solutions with a user-centered approach. We need to be very careful of the digital divide, making sure to bridge that digital divide. We've heard on the one hand how wonderful it is to have so many players involved now in using these tools for extension. But at the same time, we've also heard that we need to maybe ensure some better collaboration amongst these different actors. And for that, we need an enabling environment and better incentives. I think Iman Pinto made some excellent points. In order to really further this technology, we've got to be better at measuring and monitoring the impacts on really all of the sustainable development goals and targets. So let me close there. Thank you very much to all the speakers. And we at IFPRI really look forward to collaborating further with all of you towards fully realizing the promise of multidimensional and digitally enabled ag extension services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Haberbrand, for a great reflection of the event and your insights on how we move forward as a global community for agricultural transformation and achieving SDGs. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Makoto Kitanaka, President of SAA, to give us a concluding remark. Over to you, Dr. Kitanaka.
Thank you. I hope that through today's forum, all of us, including the audience, deepened our understanding of the dynamic changes that are taking place in agriculture extension in Africa. Nowadays, not only the public extension system, but also various actors in rural areas are involved in the value chain from production to marketing to support agriculture extension in the field. Until recently, face-to-face extension has been the most common approaches, but using smartphone applications and digital tools is spreading beyond geographical space and time. We expect this speed of change will accelerate further. However, at this point, only a limited number of farmers in Africa have smartphones, and limited number of extension agents have smartphones to guide farmers. In addition, internet connections is not always good in remote areas far from urban cities. There are still many issues to be addressed in the digitalization of agriculture in Africa, but agriculture needs to keep aiming at leapfrog and develop by adopting new technologies as they emerge. In the midst of financial difficulties, the public extension system doesn't provide the capacity of covering entire countries, and some farmers will inevitably drop out of the extension network. Therefore, it is necessary to build the rural extension network that supplement the public extension system. And for that, all of us, including the central and local government, NGOs, and academic and international organizations can play a major role. The appropriate agricultural extension varies from country to country. Each country needs to discuss how to combine the public extension system with complementary function using rural human resources. And then the necessary budget should be allocated. Digital technology makes it possible to further expand the extension network that has been established. Conventional agriculture extension tend to pursue increasing yield per unit. However, it is not enough just to produce crops. Since farmers make a livelihood from the income by selling their crops, it is necessary to shift the extension approaches in the direction of market-oriented agriculture with emphasis on profit per unit. SAA is implementing agricultural extension program in 4 African countries, Ethiopia, Mali, Uganda, and Nigeria, which support and supplement activities of Ministry of Agriculture with 3 strategic pillars: regenerative agriculture, nutrition-sensitive agriculture, and market-oriented agriculture. The key is how to build a profitable and sustainable production system in the face to soil degradation and climate change. Of these, we consider ensuring soil health is a top priority. On the 5th of August, SAA hosted another official side event on soil health and the potential of regenerative agriculture that could be adapted to the context of smallholder farmers. Dr. Latanlal and Professor Kengira joined us for lively discussions. In Africa, many industries are polarized between large companies with some foreign investment and micro-enterprise. The same is true of agriculture, which is divided into large-scale farming for exports and small-scale family farming. Intermediate form of agriculture organizations are still not widely developed. The One-Stop Center Association, OSCA, presented by Joseph SAA Uganda's Deputy Director, is an initiative to foster a core organization that contributes to agriculture development at community level through the organization of farmers. We recognize that the mission of agriculture extension is not only to support farmers by delivering required knowledge and skills to individual farmers, but also to organize motivated farmers to develop their communities on their own. One OSCA in Uganda called ZAPTA has gone so far as to export maize they produce themselves to Kenya. Today's forum is co-organized by 3 organizations: IFPRI, with a long history of policy advocacy and agricultural research, AFAS, expanded agricultural extension network and support throughout Africa under the African Union umbrella, and SAA, engaging in agriculture extension in the field for over 30 years, together with the smallholder farmers, African governments, and the private sector. This is the first international forum for 3 of us, and I strongly believe we can work together to provide the best possible agriculture extension system, covering from policy to the field. For that, we'd like to further strengthen our collaboration and work together with you under the motto of working with the farmer. Thank you very much for your participation today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kitanaka. Due to time constraints, we are sorry that we have not been able to respond to all the questions posed during the event. But as I said, we will try to answer them as much as possible at a later date by putting them on SAA's website together with full record video of this event. On another note, you will be asking all the audience today for your cooperation in filling out an online questionnaire we will be sending you next Monday. Now, we'd like to invite all the event presenters and speakers to show their faces on the screen, turning on the video to take a quick group photo. Sorry, keep smiling, sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. We have it well captured. So finally, I want to convey our sincere thanks to all the speakers and panelists for participating in this event, contributing your valuable experiences and insights to accelerate agricultural transformation in Africa through more inclusive and dynamic multidimensional digitally enabled agricultural extension system. Thank you so much. We wish you a good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Bye.